The first time Eli Carter realized he might never leave the Red Canyons alive was not when the Apache riders surrounded him at dawn, nor when his horse bolted in fear and vanished into the dust, but when the elder woman with silver-braided hair studied his eyes and said, with a voice calm as winter fire, that before he could walk away from their land he would have to please every woman of the tribe, a sentence that rippled through the camp like a strange wind and left Eli standing there with empty hands, a dry mouth, and a heart beating so loud he was sure the mountains could hear it, because Eli was a rancher, not a hero, a man who measured his days by fences mended and calves born, a widower who still set 2 cups on the table some mornings before remembering one would stay untouched. And as he stood under the open sky with dust on his boots and fear pressing against his ribs, he wondered what kind of test this could possibly be, and whether any goodness he carried inside him would be enough. The tribe did not bind him or strike him. They gave him water and led him to a shaded place near the creek, and it was there that the first lesson began, though Eli did not yet understand it, because the youngest girl brought him a cracked clay bowl and asked him to fix it, not with glue or iron, but with patience. And Eli, who had spent years repairing broken gates with wire and worn tools, sat for hours smoothing the edges, tying them gently, learning to wait, and when the bowl held water again without leaking, the girl smiled not with triumph but with relief, as if something inside her had been mended too. And that evening the women gathered and spoke among themselves while Eli was given bread and allowed to sleep, confused but alive. The next morning an older woman asked him to help her carry firewood, though her back was bent and her hands shook, and Eli slowed his steps to match hers, listening as she spoke of children buried and winters survived, and he realized then that pleasing in this place did not mean performing or proving dominance, but offering steadiness, presence, and respect. And so the days unfolded in unexpected ways as one woman asked him to teach her how to mend leather, and another asked him to listen as she sang a song for a husband lost to war, and another, sharp-eyed and proud, challenged him to speak truthfully about why he had come so far alone, and Eli, who had rehearsed 100 lies to protect himself, found his voice break as he spoke of a small grave behind his ranch house and the quiet that followed. A silence not of judgment but of shared understanding, because grief, he learned, spoke a language older than any tribe, and with each task, each conversation, each shared moment of work or listening, Eli felt something inside him shift, a realization dawning that all his life he had tried to earn worth through strength and endurance. Yet here he was being measured by his willingness to be gentle. The unexpected turn came when a young mother approached him with anger blazing in her eyes and accused him of being no different from the men who had passed through before, taking what they wanted and leaving wounds behind. And Eli could have defended himself, could have listed the good deeds he believed he had done, but instead he knelt in the dust and said he was sorry for the harm his people had caused, even if his hands had not delivered it. And in that moment the camp fell silent, because apologies without excuses are rare, and the woman's anger softened into tears as she spoke of promises broken. And Eli stayed there until the sun dipped low, not fixing, not correcting, simply bearing witness. And that night the elder woman told him that pleasing was not about being liked, but about being worthy of trust. As the days stretched into weeks, Eli worked alongside the women, helping gather herbs, repair shelters, care for children, and he noticed how each woman carried a different strength, some loud, some quiet, some sharp as flint, some soft as river grass, and he began to understand that the test was not a checklist but a transformation, one that required him to see women not as obstacles, prizes, or judges, but as full lives with histories and hopes. And the emotional climax arrived on a morning when the creek flooded suddenly after heavy rain, sweeping away a small footbridge that connected the camp to higher ground, and panic spread as supplies and children were stranded on the far side, and without hesitation Eli waded into the rising water, tying a rope around his waist and anchoring it with careful knots, making trip after trip to guide others across, his body shaking with cold and effort, until the last child was safe and he collapsed on the bank, exhausted, and as he lay there coughing, he felt hands cover him with blankets, heard voices praying in a language he did not know but somehow understood. And when he woke, the elder woman knelt beside him and said the words he would carry for the rest of his life, that pleasing all the women did not mean satisfying demands but honoring life, that compassion given freely multiplies, and that by choosing to serve without expecting reward, he had already earned his leaving. When Eli finally stood at the edge of the land with a borrowed horse and the sun setting behind him, the women gathered not to bar his path but to send him forward, each placing something in his hands, a repaired bowl, a strip of mended leather, a song hummed softly, a nod of respect. And the young mother who had once accused him now smiled and told him to remember that kindness is not weakness, but courage practiced daily. And as Eli rode away, he felt no triumph, only gratitude and a quiet resolve, because he understood that he could never return to being the man who measured worth by fences and acres alone. And back at his ranch, months later, when travelers passed through and strangers needed help, Eli found himself listening longer, giving more, setting an extra cup on the table not out of habit but hope, carrying with him the lesson that true freedom is not granted by force or permission, but by the choices we make to honor one another. And in that understanding, born among the Apache women who taught him how to please by serving, Eli discovered a truth that belongs to all humanity. When we meet one another with humility, patience, and compassion, we do not just earn the right to leave. We earn the chance to become better than we were, and that, more than any open road, is what sets us free.